Today I'm going to be showing a recipe for beef meatballs. I wasn't necessarily a meatball fan before I started making my own, and then I realized how easy they are and how much better they are than ones that I could get from like the store or a restaurant or anything like that. I use lean ground beef because this technique is going to be really kind of a guaranteed way to get really nice moist meatballs. So you can use whatever fat percentage you would like, but I just do lean ground beef. You can also do pork, whatever. Essentially, the secret to making sure that your meatballs stay really moist and delicious is to use breadcrumbs instead of, some people use bread and then they pull it apart. But we're gonna hydrate our breadcrumbs with heavy whipping cream or milk or whatever you have, and we're gonna let that sit off to the side for like 5 minutes to fully hydrate the breadcrumbs, and then mix everything together. And we'll add like cheese and all that to our breadcrumb mixture, and that way you can control the amount of moisture that you're putting in and just the correct ratio of beef to the filler. And a lot of people think that the more like filler part you have in the meatball, the worse quality, but when you're doing it very flavorfully with mixtures of cheeses and the breadcrumbs that we're going to season and the heavy whipping cream, it actually makes it really delicious, and they're just always super moist and just melt in your mouth great. Okay, in this measuring cup I have about a cup of Italian breadcrumbs, and I'm going to add heavy whipping cream, about another cup. I usually just do a 1-to-1 ratio to really hydrate everything, but you can adjust it as you need. If your crumbs feel a little bit too dry, obviously add more. If they're too wet, add a little bit more breadcrumbs. You get the gist. But we won't fully understand how this is gonna mix and immerse until we let it sit for about 3 minutes. As I just mixed it right now, right off the bat, I can see that it's gonna be too dry and sandy already. So I'm gonna add some more heavy whipping cream and mix it up again and let it hydrate. That's why this method of using 2 bowls instead of 1, obviously people just want to be simple and use 1 bowl, but it's really, really important to use 2 bowls in this recipe so you can understand the amount of moisture that you're putting into your meatballs and make sure that it's correct. Whereas if you just put everything in 1 bowl, you don't get to really analyze what you're doing correctly. I'm adding way more heavy cream than I thought I would need to this mixture, and if I did everything in 1 bowl, I would have dry meatballs because there wouldn't be enough fat and moisture from the beef to keep everything good. This is a little less than half of a Parmesan wedge that I finally grated. This seems like pretty much the right texture. It's bready, but not grainy or sandy at all. You want to make sure it's really hydrated. This is with the cheese mixed in, so it's a touch drier. I usually have ricotta cheese, but I don't have any on hand. So to replace the ricotta cheese, I am just going to add like 3 more tablespoons of heavy cream to make up for the moisture. And then I'll probably end up grating a little bit more Parmesan cheese because it looks like it needs it. Just adjust it as you wish, as you think it needs, but either way, like, it'll be fine. It'll really be fine, don't worry about it. Now on to the beef portion of this evening. I have 2 packs of ground beef in my bowl, and to season them, I'm just gonna do salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder, and then red pepper flake. I'm gonna use powdered onion and garlic because we don't cook these meatballs for that long, and I don't want to have undercooked onions and garlic in them. That's just my personal preference. And I'm doing a marinara sauce meatball today, which does already have obviously onion and garlic in my sauce. If you're gonna add fresh onion and garlic, I would cook them on a saute pan first, so that way you don't get like crunchy meatballs with too strong of flavors. But you can season these any way you'd like to. It's up to preference. If you're doing like a gravy meatball with mashed potatoes, you can add some of that gravy into here to season it. You can also add some of your marinara sauce in here if you'd like. Just season them however you want to. It really doesn't matter. You can make these 101 different ways and have them be really good. You can also use different meats. You can do half ground beef, half ground pork, or you can do like chicken meatballs, you can do turkey meatballs. It really doesn't matter. They'll still be moist if you have a moist enough bread crumb filling. That's really the secret to this. Oh, I just added thyme as well. I added a lot of thyme right now. And here's the red pepper flake. And then for my herbs, I'm just gonna do some basil and parsley. I always wonder why meatballs at restaurants aren't as good as ones that I make at home, because it's so easy to impart a lot of flavor into them. I just don't understand why they're not as good. And you really can't mess up on them. You can flavor them 101 different ways. But anyway, so now that I've seasoned my ground beef, I'm gonna glove up, mix up my meat, and then I'm gonna add my squishy breadcrumb mixture. Typically, I'll do about a 60-40 split of meat to filler mixture. But I kind of just play by ear and mix them together. Then I'm gonna roll them into balls and cook them at 375 for 30 minutes. Depending on the size of your meatball, you can do really tiny meatballs, or you can do really large ones. I do all the ones in between. It's so incredibly cold to do this. I did not end up using all of the cheese mixture. I have about this much left. So just adjust it based on how much you think the meatballs need by looking at them. This is what they look like after I've made my meatballs. As you can see, the color is a lot lighter than ground beef because we have all that meat, cheese, and breadcrumbs and all that. So this is the color that I usually go for. They're a lot larger than I intended to make them. You can't really see on camera, but if you want to make mini meatballs, you obviously can make them super tiny, the size of like little SpaghettiO meatballs, and those are super good. Today I'm baking my meatballs on a baking tray, and just the bottom side of them is going to get a nice crisp. If you want, you can also make the meatballs by searing both sides in a pan and then adding your sauce or your gravy and then covering it and let it simmer for 30 minutes. That way is a really great technique as well because it allows the meatballs to kind of absorb the sauce that's around them and impart even more flavor and even more moisture into the meat. I'm just doing them on a baking tray because it's really easy. If you're making the tiny meatballs, however, you're going to want to do the searing in the skillet method because if you bake them, they're just going to dry up if they're that tiny.